The girl showed up at the gate for the first time on a Monday. It was 7:22 in the morning, and she was carrying a tin lunchbox with a yellow flower painted on the lid. The kind of lunchbox a grandmother buys from the market with purpose, not convenience. She was 8 years old, 41 kilograms, and her school shoes were half a size too big because her mother had bought them to. Last 2 years, not one. She placed the tin on the concrete ledge beside the guardhouse at Mensa Industrial Supply on across Spintex Road, said nothing, and walked on toward the gate. Solomon Bedico watched her go and thought she had left it by mistake. He called after her. She turned around, looked at him the way children look at adults who are slow to understand something obvious, and said, "It's for you." Then she pushed through the gap in the pedestrian gate and disappeared into the 900 children already swarming the courtyard of Bright, future primary school next door. Jollof, red with tomato and oil, still warm through the metal, with 2 pieces of fried plantain tucked against the side and a small fold of paper towel doing the work of a napkin. Solomon Bediako held the tin for a long time before he ate from it. He had been working the morning gate at Mensa Industrial since the previous April, 11 months, 4 6-hour shifts per week. A blue uniform that had been washed so many times the collar had faded to a color that was not quite white and not quite blue. He ate the rice standing up at his post the way he ate most things. He set the tin on the ledge and said to no one in particular, "All right then." She came back the next morning, and the morning after that. Her Adaes Okafor. She was in primary 3 at Bright Future, and she walked 47 minutes each way from the room she shared with her mother on Danfa Road, a walk that took her past 2 bus stops, one of which had a broken concrete bench she had named Gerald because it listed to one side. She wore her hair in 2 plaits that her mother pinned at precisely 6'4" every morning, and she carried that yellow flower tin every day the way she carried everything she was trusted with. Both hands, level, careful. Her mother, Nkechi Okafor, was 31 years old and weighed 53 kilograms, 6 of which she had lost in the 14 months since Adae's father had taken the car, the savings account, and the explanation he owed them and moved to Kumasi with someone who asked fewer questions. Nkechi worked 2 jobs. Days, she cleaned rooms at the Accra Airport View Hotel on the stretch of Liberation Road closest to the terminals. 7 rooms per shift, 4 shifts per week, 12 cedis per shift. Evenings, 4 nights out of 7, she ironed and folded shirts for Mr. Asante Poku's laundry service 2 streets over, feeding pressed collars through her hands from 7 p.m. until she could not keep her eyes open any longer. She had calluses on her right palm from the iron's handle that she rubbed with shea butter every night so they would not crack, because cracked hands slowed her down, and slowness cost her shifts. She made Adae's lunch every morning before 5:45. The recipe did not change because changing it cost money, and Adae's had not complained. Jollof rice, made in a quantity that gave Adae's enough for school and left enough for Solomon Bediako, whom Adae's had started calling the gate man, and then, by the 3rd week, Uncle Solomon without being asked or permitted. Nkechi had not met Solomon. She knew about him the way she knew about everything in her daughter's life, through the particular and specific reports Adaeze delivered every evening in order, standing at the kitchen table while Nkechi stirred the pot, her school shoes still on, her bag still on her back. Uncle Solomon had told her that pigeons could find their way home from 500 kilometers away. Uncle Solomon had shown her the logbook where he recorded every vehicle that entered the compound, plate number, time in, time out, purpose. In handwriting she said looked like a typewriter. Uncle Solomon had let her stamp visitor on a blank slip on a Friday when the road was, and she had stamped it 17 times. "You are disturbing the man," Nkechi said. "He told me to come back," Adae said. And Nkechi listened to this for 6 weeks before she walked the 47 minutes herself, one Thursday evening after the laundry shift, arriving at the gate of Mensa Industrial at 9:11 p.m. The night guard on duty was not Solomon. She left a note in an envelope she had borrowed from Mr. Asante Poku's office. "My daughter brings you food. I am sorry if she is a nuisance. N. Okafor, Danfa Road." She gave the night guard the envelope and walked home. Solomon received the note the next morning, read it twice, and wrote back on the same envelope, turned inside out and folded in half, which was all he had. "She is no nuisance. The food is the best I eat all day. Please don't stop Hass. Bediako." Adae's delivered this message as a verbal report from memory that evening, standing at the kitchen table, her school shoes still on, Nkechi pressed the inside-out envelope flat against the counter and did not say anything for a moment. She had been apologizing for her daughter's presence in other people's lives so often in the past 14 months that she had almost forgotten it was not a daughter's place to apologize for existing. She folded the envelope and put it in the drawer under the stove where she kept things she did not want to lose. If this story is already settling into something in you, stay with me, because what Solomon Bediako had been carrying to that gate every morning for 11 months, and what Adaeze Okafor was about to find out, changes everything that comes next. 3 months passed the way they do when lives are built in small units, shift by shift, tin by tin, morning by morning. Adaeze's birthday came on a Wednesday. She arrived at the gate at 7:19 instead of 7:22 and placed the tin on the ledge, and when Solomon opened it, he found jollof rice with a hard-boiled egg tucked on top and a small paper folded under the tin lid that said, in the careful handwriting of a primary 3 student, "Today, Mama made extra egg." Solomon ate the egg first. He had not been given something for his birthday in 4 years, and this was not his birthday, but the gesture entered his chest. The way such gestures enter a chest when a person has been short on them for a long while, and he sat in the guardhouse for 3 minutes after eating and watched the cars on Spintex Road, and did not check the logbook. He wrote her name in the logbook that evening in the margin. Adaeze, Wednesday. That was the day he decided to ask. He had not asked before because the food appeared and the child appeared, and both of them were reliable in a way that Solomon had learned not to. Examine too closely the way you do not examine good fortune if you want it to continue. But on a Thursday morning in the 5th month, when she set the tin on the ledge, he said to her, "Adaeze, where does this come from?" She looked at him the way she had looked at him on the first morning. "My mama makes it. Every morning before 5:45. She said this with the precision of a child who has been told the time enough times to memorize it as fact. Solomon was quiet for a moment. He was 54 years old, and he had been working security since he was 38, and before that he had worked in accounting. 12 years at Owusu Boating Holdings on the Tema motorway, a job he had lost when the company contracted, not because of performance, his supervisor had said, but because the books were being moved to a smaller department, and his position was not in the new structure. He had a certificate in financial management from the Accra Polytechnic dated March 1998. He had not used it in 16 years. The certificate was in a green plastic folder in the single room he rented on Barrier Road, between his Bible and a photograph of his mother standing outside a house in Cape Coast he had sold after she died to pay her hospital bills. "Your mama." He looked at the gate, then at Adaeze. "She works 2 jobs," Adaeze said, and held up 2 fingers the way a younger child might, then seemed to decide this was too young for her and put them down. "Airport hotel in the morning, ironing at night. And she makes this every morning before 5:45. Yes." Solomon opened the tin. He had a feeling he could not name. The kind that comes when 2 unconnected things become connected in the place behind the sternum. He looked at the rice, the specific red of it, the particular way the plantain was arranged. He said, "Does she have a name, your mama?" "Nkechi," Adaeze said. "Nkechi Okafor." Solomon did not move for a moment. He looked at the tin, then at the child, then at the gate in the way a person looks at a thing when they are actually looking at something else entirely. He said, "Go to school." Adaeze went to school. Solomon sat in the guardhouse for a long time after the morning rush had cleared. He opened the logbook to the back page, which was blank, and wrote a name. He looked at the name. He closed the logbook. He pulled out his phone and opened his contacts. There was a number in there under the initial N, not a full name, just the initial, the way you store a number when you are not sure if the conversation it belongs to is finished or only paused. He had stored it 6 years ago, at the conclusion of a matter that had not concluded the way either party had expected or deserved. He had been about to delete it every 6 months since then. He had not deleted it. He looked at the initial N for a long time. On the Monday of the following week, Solomon Bediako was not at the gate. He had requested a half-day, the first he had taken in 11 months. He wore his own clothes, a white kaftan he had washed the night before and pressed with a borrowed iron, and he took the Trotro to Liberation Road and walked the remaining 400 meters to the Accra Airport View Hotel. The lobby was cool and smelled of a cleaning fluid and something underneath it that was faintly floral. Solomon went to the front desk and asked for the manager. The man behind the desk was young in a blue blazer and looked at Solomon's caftan with the particular survey of someone whose job required him to read people by their clothing before their words. Solomon waited for the survey to complete, then said, "I am looking for a member of your housekeeping staff. Her name is Nkechi Okafor. I have an important matter to discuss with her." The young man said the hotel did not share staff schedules with members of the public. Solomon said, "Would you give her a message?" The young man took a slip of paper. Solomon wrote on it, "My name is Solomon Bediako. I worked at Owusu Boateng Holdings from 1986 to 1998. I was the account supervisor for the Northern Client Division. In 1997, there was an internal audit. I was asked to certify figures I knew were incorrect. I refused. Within 8 months, my position was eliminated. The man who asked me to certify those figures was Mr. Dexter Owusu Boateng, the company director's eldest son. The figures he wanted certified were linked to a property on the land register in Osu. That property has a legal claimant who was never notified. I know who she is. I have been carrying this information for 26 years. I now believe her daughter brings me lunch every morning. I believe it is time she knew. I will be at the same gate tomorrow morning at 7:20 if you would like to talk. Solomon Bediako." He folded the slip in half and gave it to the young man in the blazer and walked back to the Trotro stop. Nkechi Okafor received the note at 11:37 a.m. during the 15-minute break between rooms 7 and 8. She read it standing in the corridor outside room 7 with her trolley against the wall, and she read it a second time. And then she sat down on the floor of the corridor with her back against the wall, not slowly, but the way a person sits when their legs have decided before their mind has, and she held the piece of paper in both hands and did not move for the remainder of her break. She had heard the name Owusu Boateng once in her life, from her mother, in a conversation that had taken place 19 years ago, at the kitchen table of their house in Osu, the house that had ceased to be their house 8 months after that conversation, when the legal proceedings her mother could not afford to continue collapsed under their own weight, and they moved to a single room in Nima. Her mother had not spoken of it again. She had spoken of many things in the years between that kitchen table and her death, 2 years ago in the hospital ward at Coral, but not of the house in Osu, not of the name on the land register, not of the man who had insured the land registry, showed a different name from the one her grandmother had signed in 1974. Nkechi's mother had believed the truth was gone. She had not known there was a man at a gate who had been carrying it for 26 years, waiting for a reason to set it down. Nkechi was at the gate at 7:08 the next morning. Adaze was beside her, holding the tin with both hands. Solomon was there. He was in his uniform, the faded blue collar, and he looked the same as he always looked, except that he was not writing in the logbook. He was standing with his hands folded in front of him, waiting. Nkechi looked at him for a long moment. She said, "You knew," he said. "I suspected. When she said your name, I suspected. I needed to check the land registry before I was certain. You checked the land registry last Wednesday. The record has not been corrected. It can be." Nkechi said nothing. Solomon said, "There is a legal process. It will require your grandmother's original signature on the 1974 document, which is held in a secondary archive at the Lands Commission. It will require a formal complaint to the Title Investigation Unit. It will take between 4 and 7 months. I know a woman at the commission. Her name is Constance Adeyemi Bright. She was a junior clerk when the discrepancy was filed, and she is now the deputy title registrar. She has wanted to correct this record for a long time. She did not know how to find you." He paused. "I can make the call today." Adaze set the tin on the ledge. Nkechi looked at the tin, then at Solomon, then at the gate. She pressed her thumbnail against the outside of her index finger, the way a person does when they are trying to determine if something is real. She said, "Why did you not do this before? 26 years. Solomon looked at the gate. He said, "Because I was afraid, and then because I was ashamed of being afraid, and then because I did not know who to bring it to." He looked at Adaze. "And then your daughter left me lunch." Adaze appeared to find this to be a satisfactory explanation. Nkechi made one sound, short, from somewhere behind the sternum, and pressed both hands against her face. She did not cry. She stood with her hands against her face for a moment, and then she took them down. And her face, when it came back into view, was the face of a person who has been carrying something a very long way, has just been told they can put it down. She said, "Make the call." Constance Adeyemi Bright answered on the second ring. The formal complaint was filed at the Lands Commission in Accra on a Thursday afternoon 3 weeks later. Nkechi brought Adeze because Adeze had asked to come, and because Nkechi had decided some time ago that her daughter would not be kept outside of the things that concerned them both. Adeze wore her school shoes, the ones a half size too big, and carried a folder of documents that Nkechi had assembled over 21 days from the Secondary Archive, the National Records Office, and a box under her bed that had belonged to her mother, inside which was a handwritten receipt from September 1974, the ink faded to the color of old tea, signed in the bottom corner with a name in a handwriting neither Nkechi nor Adeze had seen before, but which was, beyond any document in the archive, the most real thing in the room. It was Adeze who noticed the stamp at the bottom of the receipt. She was standing at the table in the Lands Commission office, and she pressed one finger to the stamp and said to her mother, "This is the same stamp as Uncle Solomon's logbook." Constance Adeyemi Bright looked at this child for a moment. Then she said, "How do you know what a Lands Commission stamp looks like?" Adeze said, "He let me stamp things on Fridays." Constance looked at Nkechi. Nkechi said nothing and did not need to. The title investigation took 4 months and 18 days. The finding confirmed that the 1998 registration of the Osu property under the name Dexter Owusu Boateng had been executed without the required notice to the previous title holder's heirs, which included Nkechi Okafor as the primary beneficiary of her mother's estate. The property, a plot of 0.34 acres on Cantonments Road in Osu, with a 2-room structure now used for storage by the tenant, was returned to the legal register under Nkechi's name on a Tuesday morning in June. Solomon Bediako was there. He had taken another half-day, the second in 13 months. He wore the white kaftan again. Dexter Owusu Boateng received the commission's notification by registered post. He did not contest it. His lawyer had told him on the telephone, very quietly, that the internal audit records from 1997 had been submitted to the commission as supporting evidence, and that pursuing a contest would require him to explain publicly why a senior accounts officer had refused to certify his figures. He did not contest it. Solomon still works the morning gate at Mensa Industrial. His shift starts at 6 and runs to noon, and the logbook is 3 volumes full now, each plate number in the same handwriting that Adeze still says looks like a typewriter. He turned 55 in September and found a tin on the concrete ledge when he arrived at 5:58, earlier than usual because the trotro had been fast, and inside was jollof rice with 3 pieces of plantain and a piece of paper that said, "Happy birthday, Uncle Solomon," from A and Mama. He ate it standing at his post. He had eaten better meals in his life, and he had eaten worse. This one he finished in full. Nkechi Okafor took the room on Cantonments Road, the 2-room structure, and opened the door to it for the first time on a Saturday morning with Adeze at her side. The room had not been aired properly in several years. It smelled of dust and concrete and the particular closeness of places that have been waiting. Nkechi opened the window. Light came in. Adeze stood in the middle of the room and turned around slowly, with her arms slightly out from her sides, the way children stand when they are measuring a space, deciding what it is. Nkechi pressed her hand against the wall. The plaster was cool and a little rough. She kept her hand there for a long time. She had not stood in a room that was hers, legally, recorded, tight hers in 31 years. Dexter Owusu Boateng had believed in 1998 that by removing Solomon from the accounts department and allowing the 1997 audit report to disappear into an internal archive, he had closed a door on something permanently. He had believed that the woman whose family had signed that receipt in September 1974 would not find her way back to it. He had believed that enough years, enough paperwork, enough silence could make a wrong thing into a finished thing. He did not account for the particular stubbornness of truth, which has no interest in convenience or timing. He did not account for the kind of person who writes a refusal into a logbook and holds it for 26 years like a document, not an opinion. And he did not account for an 8-year-old girl who decided on a Monday morning to share her lunch. The world has a way of moving information toward the people it belongs to. It moves it through markets and church doorways and hospital corridors, through the hands of women who iron shirts at 11 p.m. and men who press logbook stamps carefully enough to teach a child to respect the weight of a record. It moves it through the most ordinary acts, a tin set on a concrete ledge, a note folded into an inside-out envelope, a girl who said it's for you and walked away without waiting for a thank you. You cannot keep truth locked in a wrong name forever. You can paper over it, you can reassign it, you can build a filing system that buries it under procedure and years. But somewhere there is a person who was in the room when the record was wrong, and they are carrying the correction in their chest, and they are waiting, not forever, but long enough, for the right person to arrive at their gate. Nkechi did not know she had spent 5 months sending her daughter to the one man in Accra who had something that belonged to her family. She thought she was making lunch. She was making a bridge. That is how it works. Not with speeches, not with battles. With a tin, a yellow flower on the lid, a child with both hands level, careful, walking the 47 minutes every morning because her mother told her not to, be late, and because she had decided with the absolute authority of an 8-year-old who has made up her mind that the gate man should not eat alone. If someone had asked Adaeze Okafor why she started bringing Solomon food, she would have looked at them the way she looked at everyone who asked obvious questions and said, because he was there and she had enough. She would have considered this a complete answer. She would have been right. Subscribe for more stories about the people the world overlooks and what they are carrying while the world isn't looking. Here is the question I want to leave with you. If you had known for 26 years that a wrong had been done, a real, legal, documented wrong, and the person it was done to had never been told, would you have carried it? And if you had carried it that long, what would finally make you put it down? Leave your answer below. I really want to read it. I'll see you in the next one.